Hey, ready women. Okay, Lisa here for part two, for number two of the 7 tips to live that fulfilling life in 2022 and beyond. So number 2 is be a woman of your word. Now, I know right off the back, we take that to mean fulfilling all promises, fulfilling all commitments, and that does have something to do with it. But I want us to look at it in a different way. Being a woman of your word, I'm really talking about letting your yes be yes and your no be no, as the word of God says. When we give a yes to someone, we're really giving that yes to God. And so we want to complete that yes. We want to carry it out. We want to fulfill it. If we're not able to, then let's not ignore it. Let's go back and say, I'm not able to complete that, not able to fulfill that, not able to do that. That makes you a woman of your word. We're not always going to be able to do everything in the timing or time frame that we say we're going to do it. But if we come back and say, I'm not able to do that, or I'm going to have to stretch that out a week, a month, or I'll get back to you when I'm able to do that, then you're still in that realm of being a woman of your word. You're being honest. You're being human. You're saying, I'm not able to do this or do that right now. Or I know that I committed to this or that, but this is what has changed. Have those conversations. Follow through with those conversations, because that's what people will know you as, right? Even when you have to change the game plan or do something different. But I want to talk to you about, under being a woman of your word, I want to really talk to you about the power of no. Especially as women, we have so much difficulty saying no. And then all of a sudden you realize that your calendar is so jam-packed with everything you said yes to that you cannot accomplish it. And so the power of no requires us to be disciplined. The power of no helps us to make decisions that are more set with boundaries. I'm not big on balance. I know people say work-life balance. I'm not big on that language, because I think you set yourself up for failure the moment you say, I'm trying to accomplish work-life balance. Okay, let me know how that works. What I really shoot for is boundaries. To me, that's a better focus. It's clearer. I look for things that make sense to me. It's got to make sense. It's got to be biblical. And if it's biblical, it'll make sense. Okay, so it's got to make sense to me. So boundaries make sense to me, because God has established boundaries for us, not to restrict us, not to hinder us, not to punish us. God has established boundaries to bless us, right? To help us, to grow us, to help us to make wise decisions in our lives. I remember long ago, I was in my early 30s and I was doing biblical counseling, and I was counseling a woman, and she said to me, I think God is restricting us when he says not to be with people you're unequally yoked with. I mean, what if you fall in love with somebody that might not be exactly in the same faith or anything like that? And I remember this woman very well because she was very intense, and she was a Christian, and she was very intense. And I said to her, I said, stick a pen. I want you to go back and hear what you said. You said that you feel that God is restricting us, hindering us from being happy, because he's established in his word this principle, this guideline, this command for us not to be unequally yoked. And I said, is it really that, a restriction typically means something negative, right? And I said to her, how about a different view? How about looking at this differently? How about looking at it as God established that as a boundary to help us to make a decision about who we allow up close to us, so that we're doing that, allowing a person up close to us, whether it be a spouse or even a best friend, that we're making a decision based on that boundary, because that boundary is established to help us, not to hinder us, to bless us, not to burn us. Come on. And the reason why this person was counseling with me is because she was in this bad relationship. She had not agreed to that boundary that God had established, and as a result was in this difficult crisis at that time. I just use that as an example. Boundary to me is better than trying to do this life-work balance thing, because what denotes that? What really denotes the balance? Think about that. Who really gets to say who has, who's got the formula on life-work balance? Who's got that down pat? Nobody. But if we establish boundaries for ourselves, right? A boundary in being a woman of our word. If we establish that boundary and learn to say no where we need to say no, right? There are clients, well, they're not clients. There are people who come to me for my services that I have had to decline. Now, my executive coaches that are in my life, the men and women who pour into my life, they may say, don't turn away the business. Some of them wouldn't. Some of them would say, you're right to do that. But it's the point that I'm going to say no to whatever can create a lack of boundary in my life, to and including who I do business with. For you, it might be where you serve, or how you serve, or where you work, or how you work, or what friendships you're in, or what relationship you're in. Be a woman of your word. Have the integrity to say yes and mean it, or no and mean it. And don't be afraid to say no. I oftentimes, and I wasn't good at saying no for up until maybe about 14, 15 years ago. But one of the things I do is, for everything I say yes to, there's something I have to say no to. So because of that, I'm very conscious of being a woman of my word, and I'm not perfect at it. I mean, last year I said yes to something or maybe the year before, we're in a new year now, that I believed was what God wanted me to do. And it was what he wanted me to do. But what I had not done, I didn't follow through on, when I said yes, I should have followed through on what do I need to say no to now. I didn't do that. So I became overwhelmed immediately. Have you been there? Maybe you're there right now. Don't be afraid to say no when you need to say no. Say yes when you need to say yes, but say no when you need to say no, so that you're a woman of your word, so that you can have boundaries established for yourself that helps protect your peace, helps protect your sleep, helps protect your physical care, your spiritual care. Because when we don't do that, we get out of balance. That's where the balance comes in. We get out of balance, right? We get cranky, we get irritable, we get overwhelmed. We start questioning, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing this? I thought this was God. Maybe it's not God. And when we don't set boundaries for ourselves, ladies, it conflicts with our ability to do what God did tell us to do. Whoa. Go back and write that down. I love you. Stay tuned for part 3. I'm still waiting. My appointment in Maitland, where I am right now, is not till 10 o'clock. I'm going to see if I can do one more video. This is on the 7 tips to living that fulfilled life. God bless.